Hello, my name is Gary West and I'm one of the professional officers at PDL.
And I'm Gilbert Yeates, the Queensland Director of PDL and Deputy Chair of the Board.
So we're here today to talk to you a little bit about a practice alert that we've just released in regards to the UTIPP-Q, or the Urinary Tract Infection Pharmacy Pilot Program that's been released for Queensland, and just give you a little bit more background information to go along with the practice alert.
Well, you've probably heard this is a groundbreaking service, basically allowing pharmacists to provide therapy without a prescription to females between 18 and 65 with uncomplicated urinary tract infections. There is a detailed protocol for pharmacists to follow, which will provide the details on the treatment considerations, when to supply, when not to supply, and what to supply. Obviously, that's important to follow that protocol, but importantly, this service is authorised under Queensland regulation. So if you're looking at this anywhere else in Australia, the service is not available to be provided anywhere but Queensland, and that's particularly relevant for our pharmacists in the Northern Rivers just across the border from Queensland. There may well be some media or publicity that consumers at the southern part of Queensland see, and they may well come to a pharmacy in New South Wales, northern New South Wales, and request a service. So it's important to understand this service is only authorised under Queensland health regulations.
And just to say at the outset that the PDL master policy for PDL employee pharmacists automatically covers all pharmacists undertaking this activity, so long as they've complied with all the guidelines and regulations that have been set.
So there are two components to delivering this service. One is for the actual pharmacist who delivers the service, and I'll talk about that first. So that the pharmacist needs to have completed successfully the training module that's available on the Pharmaceutical Society and Pharmacy Guild of Australia websites and reach the appropriate pass mark. Secondly, they have to have consented to take part in the research program that will evaluate this service. So that's each and every pharmacist who chooses to or wants to deliver this service needs to complete those two elements. And importantly, the other requirement is that if a pharmacy business wants to offer this service, then they need to be enrolled or registered in the pilot. The only two criteria for that are that you're located in Queensland because it's under Queensland legislation, and secondly, that you have current QCPP accreditation. So those are the two streams, and it's important to note that if you're a pharmacist who's completed the training and consented to the research, you can only deliver the service in a pharmacy that is also enrolled and registered and consented for the pilot. So if you work across multiple pharmacies, it's critical that you talk to the manager or proprietor to determine that the pharmacy themselves are also enrolled in the pilot, because that is the only locations from which you can offer this service.
So our practice alert does talk about the drug therapy protocol, or DTP, that allows this practice or this service in Queensland, and our alert has a hyperlink in it that takes you to that legislation. And also just to let you know that both the Pharmacy Guild of Australia and PSA websites have information available on this program, irrespective of whether you're a member of those organisations. Furthermore, if you have any other questions or uncertainties, please feel free to give us a call and speak to myself or one of my colleagues at PDL, just using the 1300 number at any time. So just to give you a little bit more detail about some aspects, Gilbert, if you just want to talk a bit more about the DTP.
Right. So DTP, Drug Therapy Protocol, is the regulatory instrument that provides guidance. And probably the most critical points of that are, one, you must follow the protocol that's in the training. And then the other part that's as critical is you must use the Gilcare NG module to record the service. Now, the Gilcare NG module is available to every pharmacy in Queensland that's part of the trial, regardless of your current subscriptions or with Gilcare. The important thing with that is you must complete the full protocol for each and every service. Now, clearly, it's quite common or easy for people to complete the record where you actually go ahead and supply one of the three possible antibiotics for someone who meets all the criteria. But given this is a clinical service and a research pilot, it's important to complete the full clinical record, even if you do not supply anything because of either contraindications or other reasons. And thirdly, the other part of completing the full module and record is if you do refer to a doctor or other medical practitioner for the patient, for support for the patient. All three scenarios must be fully recorded in the module.
So we've already mentioned that you need to register to provide this service. That registration process can be accessed through the training module on either the PSA or the Pharmacy Guild websites. And as I've already mentioned, you don't have to be a member of those organisations to access those websites and complete, firstly, the training module, and then also the registration process. You do have to consent to be involved, and it's vital that you do complete the documentation appropriately. And just again to reiterate that the PDL policy automatically covers all pharmacists who are undertaking this activity under the scope of the DTP in Queensland in a QCPP accredited pharmacy. We have to stress that it has to be a registered pharmacy, and the pharmacy business owners need to ensure that the site is registered. They also have to ensure that their business insurance policy for the pharmacy also provides them cover for this service. So just making sure that you do double check with your employers, if you're an employee pharmacist, that the pharmacy is registered and covered.
And the other important point, like everything that you do, you should always consider the privacy of the information that you obtain and also the confidentiality in gathering that information. This is a clinical service. This is a sensitive area or type of condition. So it's important the service is provided discreetly in a confidential area, and all forms of the clinical record are securely held and kept private.
Also, to that sort of point, you're going to be providing referrals to general practitioners for those clients who you feel don't comply with the criteria set out by the pilot program, and those referrals need to be completed in both a professional and clinical manner. Pharmacists sometimes are a little less well prepared and experienced at providing these referrals, so we really want to impress upon pharmacists to make sure that they are professional, that they cut to the point, that they convey the appropriate clinical message to those health practitioners. Moving on, there's a couple of other areas that we're quite concerned about. Obviously, communication is vital in this particular area, and we have a couple of points in regards to that.
So given this is a new service and a research program, it's important the consumer is fully informed of the process and you get consent for their participation and consent to share their data with the research project. So informed consent and recording of that consent is important.
And the patient needs to be aware that there will be a follow-up as part of the pilot program that needs to be undertaken by the pharmacist either providing the service or another registered UTIPP pharmacist, that this follow-up process must be done by somebody who's engaged in the pilot program. And if the patient isn't informed of that and they get a call from somebody else, that can raise some concerns. So please make sure that they're fully informed about that. Also, the follow-up is required as part of the pilot program. You need to follow those protocols, even if the patient doesn't allow their data to be applied to the research pilot. You may need to follow up still, and again, making them aware that there is going to be follow-up contact, and that's part of the whole process of supply as well.
So probably to recap at the very end of this short talk is three key areas that we consider are important from a risk management perspective. So the service can only be provided by pharmacists who've successfully completed the training and consented to the research pilot and have professional indemnity insurance. And as we've mentioned, if you have a PDL master policy, that's automatically included. And secondly, in relation to that, you must only provide this service from a pharmacy that's enrolled or registered in this program. So it's important if you work across multiple pharmacies to check that every pharmacy you work in is registered for the pilot. Probably the other major area of risk management is the clinical record in GilCare NG. So regardless of whether you supply an antibiotic as per the protocol, whether you don't supply because in your opinion it's not a urinary tract infection, or you refer to a medical practitioner for further advice because it appears to be a complicated urinary tract infection. All three scenarios should be fully recorded in the GilCare module, both for your own clinical records and also for research evaluation. And also part of the service is to ensure you fully counsel the patient, and that would include provision of CMI. So those are the risk management areas that we'd like you to consider and focus on with this new service.
And so in summary, we'd just like to direct you to the practice alert that's been provided recently. It's also available on the members' website for future reference. To read thoroughly all the documentation provided through the pilot program and the drug therapy protocol. And as I said, you're most welcome to contact myself and my colleagues if you have any other specific questions. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.